Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's 12:03. We
Let's
have
do it.
we have a nice group of people who are very timely. I appreciate that. I'm one of those chronically on time people, for better or worse. So we're at 12:03. Let's get started. And I have a few remarks and then we'll get into the good stuff with our featured panelists with Kelly. So I want to welcome everybody. We are absolutely thrilled you've chosen to spend the next hour with us, and your time is valuable. So I want to make sure that we get started and that we have time for questions and lively conversation and discussion. My name is Dana Newman, and I am Chief Sales and Marketing Officer here at United Mail. And before we get into the meat of the day, I want to give everybody a little bit of context about United Mail. At United Mail, we take pride in helping to alleviate any anxiety around the complexities of our customers' most critical digital and printed communication by applying technology and analytics to the process. We are the last mile between our clients and their customers. And for us, we meet this expectation by investing in people, technology, and the future of communication. And we are meeting consumers where they are with personalized, secure data matched to the communication preferences of every customer profile. And we do this by aligning our digital, our print, and our mailing services to best fit the needs of customers. And this allows us to deliver on our promise of being that one-stop shop for all of our clients' digital and printed communication needs. And in preparing for our time today, I did a couple of things. I reflected on my own career. Today, we're talking about sales enablement. We're talking about culture. We're talking about the growth and advancement of the graphic arts industry specifically, but also how you can tackle the talent attraction and retention challenges that we're all very interested in understanding and unpacking. And so for me, I couldn't help but reflect on my own personal career in the graphic arts industry that started in the late 90s at Quad Graphics. And by the early 2000s, I was a sales rep for Quad in Washington, D.C. And that was where I started in earnest my sales career in this industry. And I knew that I remember the moment specifically. Quad Graphics had just won a 10-year contract to produce National Geographic. And here I was in Washington, D.C., right at the same time that all that happened. And that's where National Geographic is headquartered. And I was exiting the National Geographic building. I had the distinct honor to get to be on that team, on that sales team, and work specifically with their circulation teams to help grow circulation, help grow their business. And I met with a woman named Sue Mason who ran circulation at the time. And we had this fantastic meeting where we were collaborating, and Sue saw me as someone who could help grow their business and help her be successful. And I walked out of the meeting and I felt electric, like I was in the right place. Like I wasn't just an order taker, and I wasn't just taking people to lunch. It was more than that. And I realized at the time that was because I was growing something. I had purpose. I was a part of this collaboration with clients. And I never forgot that, never forgot that feeling. And even today, over 20 years later, when it gets hard, because it gets hard in this industry, in sales, I often reflect on that moment and many, many other moments since then as to why I'm still connected to sales, why I'm still connected and committed to this industry, and that it's about making it better for the next generation. So for me, that's a little bit about what connects me to sales and what connects me to the graphic arts industry. And I also did quite a bit of research in preparing for today. And for me, that looked like looking at a lot of different research outlets. But the one that really stood out for me was Forrester Research just recently released their 2022 predictions study. I'm not sure how many of you get this. You can go out there and download it, connect with me. I'll send you my copy. And what it revealed were the top considerations for businesses in the coming years. And we're going to touch on many of these today. And they include the Great Resignation, artificial intelligence and how it applies in our worlds, digitally always on buyers, a partner, customer, employee experience technology stack and what that means for business to business organizations. And one of my favorites, the juxtaposition that 60% of US businesses will shift to hybrid work environments. However, the research also says that 30% of those hybrid work environments won't actually work the first time. So there's a lot to be done there and a lot to figure out, which is for all of us here, for leadership, for sales folks to attempt to unpack. And when you consider the sales team, those folks on the front line representing your business and your brand and your company, what are the expectations for them to have a thriving and rewarding career? And also, what are the expectations of the buyers that those folks are trying to influence? And this research said that 17% of B2B buyers said that the competence demonstrated during the buying process was the most significant driver of purchase choice, far ahead of the relationship with the sales rep, which came in at 5%, and customer references, which was a slight 6%, which I would have thought would be much higher. So what does this all mean for us as leaders, as sales leaders, and as sales professionals? And here to help us unpack all of this, to decipher fact from fiction and give us the goods on building the team of the future, is Kelly Mallozzi. Kelly is an industry veteran. She's an expert, a business owner, an author, a speaker, and really an all-around badass. So everyone, please, please, please join me in welcoming Kelly Mallozzi.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, Dana. Thank you everyone for being here. This is really a fun, magical, terrifying time, isn't it, to be in the world? It is something that's on everybody's minds, what this great resignation or great reshuffling or boomerang economic economy means to all of us. And so for those of us in the printing and the graphic arts industry, I've been kind of trying to meet the demand of what is on people's minds. And so this idea of what it means to build the team of the future, how it affects everyone, not just owners. But as Dana mentioned, there's a lot of research and data around this. But the thing that I would want all of you to take away from this discussion is that 70% of the buying decision is going to happen before anybody meets or talks to anybody at your organization. This kind of dials into some of the stats that Dana just presented to you, but this means that for those of us in an industry that was very used to pretty much solely face-to-face communication, let me come into your office and talk to you and meet with you when it comes to the sales function, this has really become a huge challenge for a lot of us, that when we can't go in and meet people face-to-face, how do we do sales, right? How do we message and market and engage and communicate with our clients? And so I'm not sure, I don't know if I have to have you advance the slides for me, because I'm not seeing, the only other thing I could think of is if I share my screen, I can pull up the deck, or you could just advance, because it's not giving me an option to advance it.
Sure, I'll go ahead and advance for you.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so really in this discussion, whether you are the owner of a business or whether you are someone who has any influence, or really anyone with an opinion wants to ask the question, who do I need on my team going forward? What kinds of roles, what kinds of skills? And really, really importantly, how do I measure the performance and what an individual might bring to the table going forward? And so this graphic here, for any of you that are Ted Lasso fans, I feel like Ted Lasso is probably required viewing for anybody who's a manager, anyone who's trying to inspire people today. That's why I chose this visual. But Dana, you can go ahead and advance it. So we're really thinking in terms of, when I got started selling in the early 90s, Dana mentioned how long she's been in this industry. I'm knocking on 30 years here. It was very simple. There were salespeople and there was customer service and there were estimators, and salespeople picked up the phone and talked to customers and went and visited them face to face. So flash forward 30 years, and what many of you out there are telling me is no one's picking up the phone. Even if they do, I don't even know where to find them. Are they at home? Are they in their offices? Are they working remotely? Am I allowed to call them on their cell phones? If I want to send them something, how do I do this, right? So we look at those as both obstacles and opportunities, and realizing that there's a lot out there to harness in terms of other ways to engage with our communities. So if I'm thinking about who I want to add to my team, these titles, potential titles that you see in front of you, are ones that I can guarantee you did not exist 30 years ago. What the heck was content marketing? What did any of this mean? But today, what we're talking about is what Dana mentioned about meeting the customers where they are, and having that sales engine be on 24/7, 365. All of these things here can meet that demand and meet that need, because we can share valuable content, we can curate valuable content, and we can put it across multiple platforms so that we can reach people, whether they're on Instagram or whether they're on Facebook or whether they're coming to our website, or whether, lo and behold, they pick up a phone when we call them. These are things that, again, we want to think about when we're thinking about adding people to our team. Do they understand these concepts? And quite frankly, again, in that term of like having something really exciting about this, we all have something to learn. You know, many of you out there probably would say that your Gen Z child or next door neighbor knows more about how to build a presentation and curate valuable content than you do. My 11-year-olds can design slides on a dime. They know how. The new phrase now is search it up. I don't know, Dana, if you hear this a lot, but it's like, oh, if I need to know something, I'll just search it up, right? But digital natives, people who are younger, people who have grown up with this kind of technology, are very comfortable in this environment. So they understand things like how conversations can happen on social media, how relationships can be built on social media, how important those visitors are to your website. We want to think about things like the customer experience, right? A customer is a precious, precious thing today. We want to hold on to the ones that we have. We want to build stronger connections with them and build real mutual dependence. And again, absent the ability to invite them into our plants or to go see them face to face, all of these things that you're seeing here can help accomplish that. I liked the word that Dana used, which was enablement. Right? A lot of us that are a little bit older, been around a while, sometimes we hear these phrases and we want to kind of roll our eyes a little bit. But think about what the word enable means. Help you to use, right? Take advantage of the opportunities. And so these are some of the things that many, many organizations have on their talent stacks now. A community manager, somebody who manages all the inbound and outbound communication happening one-to-one with individuals and companies. This couldn't be more important. Think of a project manager as what we might have called a traffic person back in the day, right? A person who can work together with all of the departments to ensure that a customer is having a good experience and that we're working with the right kinds of customers, right? So these are, again, for many of you out there, probably not someone you have on your team. But as you are getting together and setting goals and making budgets and thinking about what your team is going to look like next year and the year after and in 5 years and 10 years, these very well may be people that not only will help you in terms of your reputation and your kind of image out there in the world, but will be able to provide you with tools and ideas for how to communicate with many, many different generations. So we can go ahead.
Yeah,
And
Kelly, I have one comment if you don't mind.
Yeah,
You've been
absolutely.
doing all this strategic planning as a lot of companies are, and I see your list here, and we marvel all the time at the titles that we have on staff today versus 3 versus 5 years ago. And there's an entire department in the technology world that, you know, we have developers, we have all these people. The thing that I find really interesting in looking at this list that you have here, that is a lot of these folks are all going to touch the client. Like in the past, like my story about when I got started in the late 90s, it was like customer was here, and then there was maybe one or two people in the organization, and then there were all these other people, but they really didn't have much contact with the client. Now the client sits in the middle, and all these people circulate around them, and the technology allows us to meet those customers right there in the center of the business. And at least for us, like when I'm hearing you say this, I visually think about more of a sphere around that customer, and then your whole organization is swirling around them, as opposed to this more linear way
Yes.
of organizing it.
And I also don't want you to feel scared or overwhelmed by this either, because a phrase like data analytics still kind of sends a shiver down my spine. Like I don't have an IT degree. I don't know what that, that makes me scared, and that's understandable. But what we're really talking about, it can be as basic as who is coming to your website and what are they looking for? Because when we know that information, we can decide that, oh, everybody here's looking for fulfillment. I better provide some better content and some case studies and some proof to put out there to build credibility that I am a person who understands about fulfillment, or whether that's direct mail or, some of the hot button topics out there. So we really just want to know, this data analytics helps us understand what the appetite is in our communities and with our customers and potential customers, so that we can make sure that we're providing the products and services that are the most in demand, and that you're able to be flexible and, kind of punt with that. So thanks for that interjection there. That's great. You can go ahead and move it forward. So the very next thing someone's going to ask after they ask, who are these roles and what are these people's, what do these people need to be good at, right? Because for many of us, when we were looking for a salesperson, back in the day, it would be, you got to be outgoing, you got to be able to answer questions, you got to be a good listener, you have to be able to think on your feet, things like that. Today, I'm looking for writing skills. I'm looking for somebody who understands the concept of how important words are and can craft an effective subject line for an email, someone that can express themselves in a post, right? Someone that understands what someone might be looking for and how to create a conversation, whether that's happening on Twitter or LinkedIn, or whether it's through a one-to-one, email or something like that. I definitely want people who are comfortable and at least open and willing to use the tools that are available to us today. Because, again, back in 1993, I had a sample case, I had a pager, right? And I had 3x5 cards where all my clients were listed. And I was out hoofing it in downtown Chicago 5 days a week, going to see people face to face. Today, I want you to be comfortable knowing that with permission, you can text your customers. I want you to understand that there is a lot of two-way communication conversation opportunities in LinkedIn and even Instagram and things like that. Dana, you mentioned something really important when you did your research, and that was about the accessibility and the availability of information and connection. And that's what's called being buyer responsive, right? Buyer responsive means I will be where you need me to be, how you need me to be there, when you need me to be there. And I don't touch on artificial intelligence, but what I will tell you is it's a thing, it's real. And there are plenty of organizations, plenty of printers and graphic arts companies out there where they have chatbots on their web pages, so that if somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning wants to ask a question about every door direct mail, they can hit that button on the chat feature, and at least someone will say, we will be back to you at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Thank you so much for visiting us. Right? And again, you can eye roll all you want. That is a requirement for someone who's 24 years old, right? Like they expect that they will be communicated with. And so that idea of being buyer responsive means you want to talk on the phone, I'll talk on the phone. You want me to email? Fine. You want a live chat, live stream, book your appointments electronically, whatever it is, there are affordable, reasonable, accessible tools out there that are available to make that stuff available to your customers. And whether, this is a maybe more of an old school mentality, but pipeline management, meaning I understand where I am with every one of my customers and prospects right now and what the next steps are to furthering that sale. What I'm talking about here is CRM. And it is astonishing to me how many folks out there still are not using one, or they have one, but they're not making their salespeople use it. Dana, I'm sure you and I have a lot to talk about where this is concerned, but a CRM and an attractive website are the two most important things you can give to your clients or to your salespeople, to your entire team. The gift of being able to manage those things. It's almost 2022. It is time to start embracing the technology and the tools. So we absolutely want to have a CRM where we can manage all of our opportunities. And we want to have a website that can convey very easily and quickly to potential customers who you are and what you can do for them. So Dana, you have anything you want to add to that?
Oh my gosh, we could have an entire webinar about CRM implementation.
I know.
The marketing automation that can go along with it and all of that. But I will say one thing about CRM, as someone who has been, like, quote unquote, put into a CRM as a sales rep, and as someone in sales leadership who has given the gift of CRM, that's the way I always looked at it. It is not about that. The challenge is that it is about exactly what you said, making it easier for your hunting sales reps. And I'm saying that very specifically because, especially in this industry, and we're going to get into some of that, this is for your hunting sales reps who, let's be clear, if you're selling nationally, you can be selling to almost anyone. And so when you say anyone and all these different kinds of companies all over the country, because you're not saying downtown Chicago or downtown Washington, DC, like you and I may have had that experience way back when, right? And so
yeah.
There are more touch points. So everything you said about tech and social media and the ability to do research and to do all of this from anywhere means you have far more touch points, and you want to make sure you're capturing that and you remember it so that you can maybe put some automation in there that takes care of a little bit of it for you while you're able to grow your book of business across the whole country. And to me, that's what CRM gives to sales reps. It's not about the folks in leadership looking over their shoulder saying, what are you doing today? I can't see you. So what are you really doing?
Yeah, it does feel a little bit like trust. And believe me, I know there are lots and lots of people out there who go, oh, it's just more work. I honestly don't know how someone does their job in sales without a CRM. Because again, as I mentioned, my CRM used to be a 3x5, recipe box with cards in it that had every client on it. And I had a map of the city with different regions. And then I had a binder where I would write down, left message, voicemail. Like, why would I want to go back to that? I would never want to go back to that when I can timestamp and date stamp and leave an open activity for every single customer and prospect that I have. And so those are two major things that I say as goals. A goal should be having every single customer and prospect first degree connected on LinkedIn, and having every single customer and prospect in your CRM should have an open activity associated with it. So those are a couple of kind of sidebar sales things, but we can move on because I know we have a lot to cover. So once you have found this magical unicorn who understands social media and embraces technology and understands how we engage with customers today and can craft an attractive and an effective message component, how do we measure whether this person is successful or not? And again, Dana, you and I could probably have a conversation for an hour about how long and what it's going to take for a new person to be successful. We have to invest in these people and understand that. I'm saying it's 2 years. I'm saying if you were to hire a new salesperson today, I would say that the investment that you make in that person is going to take 2 years. But one of the things that we can look at, especially if we are literally charging someone with doing this, is, are they helping us build a following on social media? Is the company page on LinkedIn gaining followers? Are they increasing their individual followers on social? Are we getting more followers on Twitter? We want to be, again, back to the idea of buyer responsiveness. we want to be where our customers are. So if we work in the creative community and we have lots of designers and agencies, I'm willing to bet you those folks are probably on Instagram more than they are on LinkedIn. So we want to make sure we're putting pretty pictures of the work that we're doing over there on Instagram as kind of a digital brag book, right? These are awesome projects that we work on. But we definitely want to make sure that the people that we put on our team understand how to curate content for our communities, right? So there's what I think is interesting, which I think everything to do with sales and marketing and anything to do with the printing industry is really exciting and interesting. But I need to curate content that is for my community. So I think about what my customers need to know because I want to educate them, entertain them, and engage them. So because my community is printers and graphic artists, if I want to entertain them, I might share something like a Sappy Off Register video. If I want to educate them, I might find a piece of content that tells them about how ink dries, right? If I have a bunch of younger, new, not as experienced print buyers in my community, I want to educate them. I want to give them tools to learn more about printing. So when I'm looking at these potential candidates, do they understand that? Do they know how to recognize good content? Ideally, somebody on your team would be able to access things like Google Analytics so that you can look every month at your web traffic and go, okay, we had this many visitors to the website and they clicked on these particular pages. They spent this much time there. That could help you inform, should we add a blog? Do we want to add a page? Things like that. I would definitely want to know that someone either has CRM expertise or understands at the very least what CRM is. I was at a seminar, in a printing industry's annual meeting down in the Carolinas a few weeks ago, and one of the presenters was a college professor. And when he showed the different social networks that college kids use today, I was terrified. The only one I recognized was Snapchat. I was like, oh my gosh, there's all these other, mechanisms that young people are using to stay in touch with each other. There's like Discord and all these different things. And I was thinking like, this is why you want to add a fresh grad to your team so they can educate you about all these things so that you can be making decisions and strategy based on the vast gamut of people that are empowered to make buying decisions today.
TikTok has a resume section, just so everybody knows. TikTok has a resume section and it is brilliant. But to your point.
Yeah. And I have been avoiding TikTok, Dana, but I think there's going to come a point where I am going to break down because
Ellie, we're getting you on TikTok.
I know.
But what I see about this list that you have here, and then coupled with the last conversation about CRM, and then you said 2 years, right? So a bunch of people in leadership, if you're on this call, you're going, oh, Kelly, 2 years, that sounds expensive. And I don't have 2 years to figure out whether someone can sell. And oftentimes, folks in leadership are like, is that person going to work out? What have they converted? What have they sold? And what I see here is you would have, especially if you're using a CRM, you would have far more metrics to say, this person is moving the needle. This person is good for this company and here's why. And we need to continue to invest in them. The business will come. They're selling to big giant whales. They're not doing one-off small projects just because they haven't converted one yet in the first 6 months or maybe even the first year. You can show that there's progress, and as a sales leader, you can understand where they might need some additional training and support to become successful, because for a $60,000 employee, it costs $35,000 to replace them. So that's expensive,
Yeah.
And I don't want to replace people. I want to develop them and see them be successful and continue to contribute to the organization. That sounds exciting to me. And this would give us more opportunity to do that.
And imagine if you mentioned being on the National Geographic team. Imagine if you put together sales teams instead of individuals, where you partnered a person who can do all of these things that you're talking about on this slide with some of the more traditional. I mean, those seasoned sales reps have a lot to bring to the table. They have a wealth of experience, all kinds of passion, and so
That is
It
such an
may be an
interesting
opportunity
idea.
for there to be some cross pollination too. They can learn from each other. So I might ask for a writing sample. I would certainly want to make, have somebody walk me through a website and talk about what the user experience is for this website. Because I was absolutely shocked. I was working on a web development project, and there was the new marketing director was quite young, and her feedback to all of the copywriting that I did was, there's a lot of words here, like this needs more pictures. And that was kind of shocking and frustrating, but also like, yeah, you're right. We have to understand what the expectation is for how people navigate today. And so big, long diatribes with equipment lists and pictures of your presses are not what you want on your website today, my friends. We can all give examples of people that are doing this really well. But again, bearing in mind, again, if I were to do anything today, if I was going to launch a new website, or if I wanted to validate whether something was effective or not, I'd ask a 25-year-old, what do you think about this? Mm-hmm. So that's a kind of an overarching thing, but we can move on.
All right.
And so the big question then, after we've identified who we want and what they need to be able to do and how we're going to measure them and how we're going to, kind of bring them into the fold, is where do we find them? This is something I ask myself every day, because Dana, to your point, the Great Resignation is on everyone's minds. There probably isn't an organization out here today that doesn't have at least one open position. Everyone is looking for somebody. I have a friend who does onboarding for a great big giant healthcare company, and daily she's sending me messages. This one didn't show up. This one, they had 75 people at their last orientation, and they do orientations every 2 weeks. There's massive amounts of hiring going on. So there is no magic bullet here as far as where we find people. So we can go forward with just some ideas. Some of these are going to be very, very old school ideas, and some of these are going to require you to move out of your comfort zone a little bit. Being very involved in the Girls Who Print movement with over 8,500 people on our LinkedIn group, there are multiple postings every single day on Girls Who Print. This company is looking for people. This company is looking for people. So social media is a great amplification tool for reaching out to people to say, this is who we're looking for. You can get real specific and reach out to individual people and ask them, do you know anyone who might be looking for this? I mean, I feel like this is an old headhunter's trick, right? If you want to talk to a particular person, maybe you have your eye on them, that you want to hire them. You don't say to them, hey, come work for me, right? You say, do you know of anybody who might want to hear about new opportunities in a real growth company that has a great culture and some great upward mobility? That's planting a seed into an individual's head of like, do I want to talk to this company? Things like that. There are still great kind of job opportunity aggregators like Indeed and things like that. But what Dana just educated me on is that even TikTok has a resume section. So all of the social channels are gateways to reaching people individually to say, we are looking for people. But I also think there are some old school ways of, if you find somebody who gave you great service in a restaurant or a bar or a retail store, it is not inappropriate to say, you're amazing. If you ever want to talk about job opportunities outside of this industry, I would love to buy you a cup of coffee. I found when I was a sales manager, I was delivered 2 different really rock star sales reps that were bartenders. They were brought to me by the owner of the company. Hey, we were out for martinis last night and we met this woman. I want you to call her. And she ended up being phenomenal. So these are things I think we still really need to pay attention to. LinkedIn, I believe, was born as a networking mechanism for job searching and people searching, and it's still a good place to to make those things out there in public. So there's a definitely an extra charge you can pay to LinkedIn to be able to post jobs and probably have that show up in the algorithm more. But I cannot stress enough how important it would be to make sure that your employees are some of your best recruiters too, right? Happy people will tell people that they want, you should come and work here. I was working with a company and I thought they were kind of unicorns because I had 3 of them in this program that I was doing, and they were all under 30. And I was like, how did they get 3 of you? And they're all friends, So for them, it's the best possible scenario because they like the place where they work and they get to be with their friends. Like who could ask for anything more than that? And finally, I will say there are more graphic arts programs at the secondary level, so at the college level, than I knew were even, I just had no idea how many there were. And so those are great places, establishing relationships with those professors and finding out which of the kids are graduating and which ones want to go into which kind of companies. But it is our job, it is your job to make your company into or portrayed as a really, really exciting technology company to work for. Because again, remember, printing is a crucial part of the marketing supply chain. So you may find a lot of fresh grads that want to be in marketing. Print is marketing, right? We are in marketing. And actually today, sales really is marketing, right? So we may have to rethink what we call the titles and things like that. That's why, maybe go back and look at that. If this is made available, go back and look at those titles, because a 23-year-old might not want to be an account executive, but they might want to be a community manager. They might want to do the same job, but called something different.
Something, Kelly, that we've done, and when I consulted, I would tell people all the time, if you're going to market your business to prospective customers, you have to be marketing your business to prospective employees in a similar manner. And in the way that you talk about your company as a place to work, absolutely. You've got an entire tribe of people who currently work there, and some of them have been there for a really long time. Why did they choose to work there? Why have they chosen to stay there? What are the opportunities? I mean, you have a baked in group of people that can talk about what it's like and the experience of working there. And for me, as someone in sales leadership, I looked at my social media presence, especially on LinkedIn, entirely about describing what it would feel like to work with us. Because that's my opportunity to say, hey, that's my personal brand right now, is these are my philosophies. This is what I think is going on. Here's some education. And I always approach it thinking, is this going to help someone better understand what it might feel like to be a part of our team? And, like, for better or worse, that's the way I approach it. And it doesn't always work for everybody, but I think that in leadership, we've got to get out of our offices, get out of our ways of thinking in many cases, and recognize that you have just as much responsibility in that social media discussion as anybody else on your team. And there's oftentimes a really deafening silence from leadership. So that's my call out, my shout out to all those folks in leadership. You got to get out there and talk about what it's like to work at your company. End of story.
Yeah. And I don't think any of us would have expected that we would have had to be doing this heavy lifting right now, right? Like, who knew that we were all going to be facing this situation of trying to convince people to come and work with us, when a year and a half ago, everybody felt lucky to have a job. I mean, what a paradigm shift, right?
Really?
Like, it went from everybody being terrified of everything to everybody having to feel like, now I gotta, spiff this place up, and I gotta, it's like trying to date somebody, right? Like, we really have to get our ducks in a row when it comes to attracting people. So let's move on, because I know there's some other good stuff to talk about here. So again, with these magical unicorns that we're looking for, what do we want to see, or what are we looking for? And, these many of these were probably adjectives that I would have wanted to describe when I was a sales manager looking for sales reps 20 years ago, but empathy wouldn't have been one of those things. And it's almost counterintuitive to kind of the old school mentality of selling, but being able to ask yourself, I wonder what that's like. And then building a strategy and a communication plan and an engagement plan around that is really crucial. So what I mean by that is, if my target, if somebody that I want to do business with is a chief marketing officer of a Fortune 500 brand, I would want to ask myself, what's it like to be a CMO of a Fortune 500 brand right now? Because once I can ask myself what it's like to be that person, I might be able to start to formulate what kinds of problems they might have and what kinds of solutions I might be able to provide for them. You would have automatically assumed that being an extrovert is a must-have for a sales rep. And I'm saying I don't think that's true anymore at all. In fact, my friend Bill does a whole series on prospecting for introverts. So it is not uncommon for people who are in sales today or that would consider a job in sales to identify as an introvert. And so being someone who's super bubbly and can talk to anybody is not necessarily the end all be all of being successful at sales today, because of how much of what we need to do is happening behind a screen, right? So it's very safe and very, it's not as daunting to craft a great email as it is to walk in and give a presentation in front of 20 architects, which I've had to do. So these are some things that we look for. These are not necessarily something that someone's going to wear right on their face, right? How do you tell if someone's confident or not? Is it how they carry themselves? How do you know if someone is persistent or not? How do we know about optimism? So we want to kind of find the questions and get a sense of a person based on some of these criteria. And sometimes it's not necessarily going to be something that we ask them. It might be a feeling that we have. But it really is important that we try to get to the bottom of this. And so if we move on, I think there's some questions or, again, some of the characteristics of what we might be looking for here. This has got a lot of words here. So hopefully there's either speaker's notes or something that you can refer back to. But shockingly, I don't want to get into a fight with anybody, but some of the most important patterns in people who are successful in sales is an experience in competitive sports or in anything that they had to either compete at or had to be elected to. So an indicator that somebody might be successful selling and engaging and marketing for you today might be that they ran track in high school, or that they were a competitive ballerina, or that they were president of their senior high school class. And for my generation, which is, I'm coming up on 30 plus 35 years being graduated from high school, but the sports I played and the instruments I played and my student government role are crucial parts of my DNA, right? And so as I look around, I really do see a lot of people that played a sport or something like that. But what we're also looking at in terms of intelligence and resourcefulness and competitiveness, which are really, really great to have in a salesperson. You want somebody who's hungry and wants to take a bite out of somebody else, right? But we're also looking at coachability. Are they open? Do they understand what it's like to be on a team? Do they understand what some of the benefits and some of the responsibilities are of being on a team? So these are things that we're looking for, and some of the things that we might be looking for behaviorally might be, did they write me a thank you note? Did they follow up with me after the interview? Things like that I would certainly, if I had somebody coming out of college, I would be advocating for those kinds of things. They might feel old school, but, generally speaking, I do think it is, it's intuitive or instinctive, but you can kind of tell by looking at somebody whether they have a positive outlook or not. Are they smiling? Are they feeling, do they carry themselves a certain way? But, again, these are just some generalizations. So for those of you out there that didn't play a sport or didn't dance or didn't compete in anything or weren't in student government, this does not mean that I'm saying you are not where you're supposed to be. These are just indicators. So we can move on. Although maybe you want to take a quick pause and see if anybody has any questions, or Dana, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I have this mantra that I always say, which is everyone's in sales, right? And
Yes.
what I mean by that is I hear all the time, especially early in my career, when I would be like, "Oh, I'm in sales," and people are like, "Ooh," or "I don't sell." And to your point, we got to shift some of the narrative around what that means, and then maybe also shift what that title is. But everyone is in sales. You're always selling something. You're trying to convince someone. You're trying to get hired. That's sales, right? You're
Yeah.
talking about why they should hire you. And I think the list that you have there is so interesting. And housekeeping note, this will be shared with everyone, and it's being recorded, so everyone will have a chance to go back and look at this. But I do think that that listening skills, and then also having the ability to recognize that the introvert side of you can be your superpower, because it forces you to be an observer. Typically, that introvert side of you is the observer and the person that is recognizing and slowing down and reading a room. And that, in my opinion, can be a superpower when I see it. So yes, someone just asked if this would be available for your viewers to download. Absolutely. Thank you, Cortez, for that question. We'll send it out as soon as we're finished, and you guys can share it around. It'll be on the website as well.
So the last parts of this discussion are going to be more around kind of your environment and your culture. So it is kind of targeted more to owners and managers, but I think we all have a role to play. Just as Dana said, we are all in sales, because at the end of the day, again, we want to take and cultivate those precious, precious customers and hold them close to us. At the same time, we're trying to draw more people to us and attract more people to us. So as an organization, these are questions that we want to be asking ourselves about what our reputation is in the industry and in our communities. Big question, what are the career advancement opportunities for people within your company? And again, these are more global and more to the entire organization as a whole. And remember that career advancement can also be training and extended learning and things where it doesn't necessarily mean a person is getting a promotion, but it means that you are committed to a person's development as a professional that works within your organization. So these are things that we really want to think about, because Dana, I don't know about you, but my whole sales career, advancement just meant more money. Like, all I wanted to do is make sure I made more money than the year before, right? If I'm in sales, I need to be moving forward, and forward means more, right? But there are elements where, maybe asking someone to be a mentor to a newer person or something like that. Those are all career advancing things as well.
Including salespeople in decision making, meaning like if you guys are doing some strategic planning, if you're considering new product lines, if you have a new piece of equipment that you're wondering which one to do, it's pretty straightforward to include a couple of other people in some, even if it's just to listen and observe and offer some opinions. Those can feel like you are more included in the organization, because oftentimes when you are in a sales position, you're right, Kelly, you're measured by your numbers and that's it. And it can start to feel like your purpose is lacking, and that
Right.
you get more satisfaction from your customer experiences and relationships than you do from your connection inside the organization. And that can be very dangerous for someone who's like, I don't know if I really belong here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And when as a leader in your organization, or even if you're cross-functional, right? Like the production folks saying, hey, what do you think about this? Or being on a task force of some kind can really help people feel more included and belong.
I love that. I love that. And I also, there is a people scientist that has made a decade-long study of the millennial generation. I am certainly not suggesting that you have to go out and get a PhD in millennials, but you want to be aware of the generations and what their expectations are and what matters to them in the workplace. So work-life balance being, we let people take time off to volunteer. We extend the same benefits to fathers that we do mothers, right? That it should not disproportionately fall to the female employees in your company, that they're always the ones taking days off because they have sick kids. Your male employees should know that you support them staying home to take care of sick children, right? This is just, leveling playing fields. This is what a younger person is going to demand of you. because younger generations see things in a much more, they have a very heightened sense of fairness and what makes
Absolutely.
sense. And they don't want to see things being, too gendered.
And what's your stance on environmental issues, right? How is the organization involved in the community? And you mentioned
Yes.
volunteering, but
Yep.
there are some very clear indicators of the values of your company based on where you put your time and your talent and your treasure. And so that can very much so be, who do you choose to do business with, right? Like I've seen it
Yes.
as well where someone gets treated poorly by a client, or a client makes decisions or says things in the world, and you as an organization can make a choice. Is that the kind of company we want to do business with and be aligned with? And that can be a very clear indicator to folks on your team what you stand for.
Right.
Yeah.
And these are top down, these are absolutely top down issues. The owner of the company has to be the one to inspire the passion, right? You can, or I guess, I mean, it doesn't always happen, right? We don't always see owners like that, but I'm telling you, when you are the one that's leading the charge and saying to people, hey, everybody gets a day off or half a day off every quarter to go, build a home for Habitat for Humanity or something, that is going to get you a lot of good feelings internally and externally. And remember, recognition doesn't cost anything. Telling somebody they're doing a great job doesn't cost anything. My one daughter's been homesick the last few days, and her twin sister came home and said, "You won Student of the Month." you know? And believe me, my kids don't win Student of the Month very often. So that is simply someone acknowledging something that, some things that she has done over the last month. And again, that didn't cost those group of teachers anything to recognize it. But I swear she grew like an inch, and she doesn't feel good. So the idea of telling someone that they're doing a great job, or, that's another thing about Ted Lasso. People watch Ted Lasso, please. Ted Lasso, one of his great little isms is, I appreciate you. He's always telling people he appreciates them. And it's so authentic and it's so genuine.
Yes.
And it needs to come from that place too. I'm not, do we have more of a deck? Cause I think we're getting on towards the end of it. So here's where I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Dana touched on this, but what matters to you and your organization. This could and probably should be a group decision. So imagine it's today and you are saying, all right, I want us to align with a few local charities, and we're going to do some things where we devote time to it. We're going to do some things where we devote money to it. And there's some things where we're going to devote resources to it. And when you make that as a plan for an entire year, it makes it real easy to say yes to people, and it makes it real easy to say no to people. Because when you have this all planned out in advance, you can say all of our resources for philanthropy are allocated for this year. Please come and ask us again next year. Because what I know happens to you printers is, one of your customers is like, hey, can't you print the golf signs? Can't you print the program? Can't you print the posters? But if you put some thought into this and you plan for it, you can, again, make it known. And again, imagine if you asked your employees, which organizations do you want us to be involved with and how? Mm-hmm. Right? So maybe we're going to go work at a soup kitchen in February, and maybe we're going to do some pro bono printing for one of the local runs or something like that. These are things that you can decide as a group, and don't be afraid to make them known. There are companies out there where if you look on their Facebook pages, their Facebook is all about what they do in the community. And it's really fun to see. Oh, they had a chili cook-off yesterday. Oh, they went to a dog shelter and they all walk dogs together. Like, it's lovely. And the diversity, equity, and inclusion idea is one that we can all start to think about and have conversations about. Whether it's, again, it could be a discussion about wanting your workforce to look more like your communities. These are just conversations that we should start to have, because again, Gen Z, they need to know it. They're going to demand it. They're going to want to know what your policies are. They're going to want to know what matters to you. So whether you put that on your website as some sort of a statement, or, it's evident by looking at your team, these are things that you want to make a point of starting to discuss in your leadership teams. And maybe I loved what Dana said about a task force. like involving multiple departments in important decisions and strategic plans is an excellent, excellent idea. And again, understanding how a millennial differs from a Gen Xer, right? So I'm Gen X and I have, I still go to the mall because I like malls. Whereas a Gen Z 23-year-old might be like, I don't like people and I don't like to talk to people. So we can formulate everything to do with how we go to market and what we talk about based on the experiences and the preferences of different generations. So it is good to be aware of those things. One thing I didn't mention about culture, and it's more about environment, is we are printers, most of us, or we while we have the appearance of being a manufacturing facility, there's also a tremendous opportunity to turn your plant into a showroom, into something that is an exciting place to visit, where people's jaws drop when they look around. I was just at a place down in North Carolina, excuse me, and they had 2 antique presses in their lobby, and every part of their building has a different theme to it. So one hallway you walk down, you feel like you're in space. One hallway, all the desks are these handmade wooden structures. You have a real opportunity to express yourself in your physical space too. And again, look around and say, is this a place that people want to come to? Is it pleasing? Is it fun? Do I have a cool coffee maker in my break room? Like, these are things that people care about. So these are things that we can all be thinking about as we move forward. And again, I love this time of year for this, because January 1's a coming. And that's when I like to make my resolutions and make my plans. So my new 2022 planner has a page at the very beginning that says, what were the biggest accomplishments of 2021, and what are the big plans for 2022? So I'm going to spend the next couple of weeks really fleshing that out, to look back and to look forward. And this is a great time to do that. So I know Dana is going to make this available to you. There's a couple of really relevant articles in here about the Great Resignation. We want to know about this from a defensive and an offensive position, right? You have to think about the people on your teams that you love, that like you can't imagine your company functioning without them, and make sure that they know how much they matter to you, and how much they know it, because God forbid you get that that like gut-wrenching message one day that one of those people is leaving you. I know it's probably happened to all of us. It's going to happen again. But from a defensive standpoint, we can be aware of it to try to make sure that we are retaining excellent talent, and that we are building organizations that are attractive and places that people seek out to work at. So
I find it interesting with the Great Resignation as well, that the opportunity side of that you can hire people from especially in sales. Everything you described, these are people that live in all different markets. They can continue to live in those markets and thrive and contribute to your organization. It's going to be incumbent on your management and leadership to figure that out and to change the way that they manage and lead in order to have that kind of sales team that looks different than it does today in many ways.
yes, and that is going to require different thinking and trust on the part of management and ownership. And it also does bring up another interesting sliver between those that cannot work remotely and those that can, right? So in the printing industry, you can't run a press remotely, right? So we want to make sure that we are listening and hearing all of the things that the people at your company are feeling. Because what I've known after working for decades in print shops is there is definitely some battle feelings between production and sales, where production is like, oh, sales is just out, golfing all day long. And sales is looking at production like, well, at least your paycheck is stable no matter what. If you do wind up being in a situation where some of your people are remote, it's incumbent upon you to make sure that the folks that have to show up every day feel okay about that, right? Because again, we can't run a press remotely, but we want to acknowledge and listen to the concerns and feelings about the people on the team. for a number of reasons. I mean, number one, because it's just the right thing to do. And number two, because again, we have to play offense and defense at the same time when it comes to our teams. So I really do appreciate everyone's attention today. Dana, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun, even though I couldn't see all you beautiful faces out there. I hope there were some good takeaways.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kelly. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And as we round out 2021, it does feel a little bit like the roaring 20s in many ways. And so hopefully we can all continue to thrive and prosper as we conclude this year and look ahead to an exciting new chapter in 2022. I will be sharing this out with everybody who registered, and please feel free to share it widely with your organizations. And the contact information for both Kelly and I will be on those messages to you guys. So reach out with questions. We're happy to support you in everything that you're doing today and in the future. Thanks, everyone.